Hilchos Taaniyos Perek Sheni, the laws of fast, chapter 2. We mentioned yesterday that there's a number of reasons that a person might want to fast. There's private fasts, if something happens to you personally or to a friend. And then there's what's called tzarot shel tzibur, communal issues, distress or trouble that affects the community, and that's also a reason to fast. When we fast in the community, the way the Rambam said it yesterday, we fast Sheni v'chamishi v'sheni. We don't fast in consecutive days. You fast Monday, Thursday, Monday, sets of 3. So now the Rambam defines in today's chapter and the next 2 also what are communal troubles. What classifies as a tzarot shel tzibur? Says the Rambam halacha aleph. Elu hein hatzaros shel tzibur shemis'aninu masriin alein. The following is the list of troubles that affect the community, over which we should fast, and we should blow trumpets. That was the main mitzvah yesterday. You blow trumpets as part of crying out to Hashem. And first the Rambam gives us the list, then he's going to go through each one and define it. Al hatzaras soini Yisrael li Yisrael. If enemies of the Jews are bothering the Jews. Al hacherev, and on the sword. Sword means if there's a war happening on Jewish land, even if it's not with the Jews. Al hadever, and over an epidemic. Al chayara, wild bad animals. Al ha'arbe, al hachosil, on locusts. It's 2 types of locusts. Al hashidafain, al hayerakoin, 2 types of blight. Blight is like a disease that affects grain. Shidafon in this context is like tvuah. You have a field of grain and it gets sick and dried out. V'al hamapoiles, and on falling walls. V'al hachaloyim, and on sickness. V'al hamizonis, on food, but it literally means like sustenance, business. V'al hamotar, and over rain. Okay, we're going to define what each one means. It's an od sug shel shidafon. Some kind of makash nogea b'tvuah. Says that Rambam halacha beis kol ir sheyesh ba tzara mikol elu, any city which experiences any of these troubles, oisa ha'ir mis'ano masras ad shetaver atzara. That city needs to fast and blow trumpets until the trouble goes away. And again, it doesn't mean to fast every day. It means to do the 3 sets, Monday, Thursday, Monday, until the trouble goes away. All the cities around it also have to fast. They don't blow trumpets. But they just ask for mercy, they pray for them. Either way, whatever place you are, whether you're the city which is directly experiencing the plague, or you're the city around it, on Shabbat, that's not a day for blowing trumpets, that's not a day for prayer, it's not a day for fasting. Except for the pain, the trouble of food, which literally means, which in context means business. We're going to see if the price of food went down so much that you can't even sell things for 60% of their value, that's called tzarat mezonot. In that case, there we cry out even on Shabbat, but we still don't blow trumpets. Trumpets are forbidden, but you can certainly pray for mezonot, for food, for business on Shabbos. So now let's define each one individually. Halacha gimel al hatzara soini li Yisrael. Ketzad, we begin with troubles, enemies of the Jews causing troubles to the Jews. What does that look like? Akum shabo larich milchama im Yisrael, or goyim, some texts have. Idol worshipping Gentiles that came to make a war with Jews. Oy lital mehem mas, or to get taxes from them. Oy likach miyadam eretz, or to take land. It couldn't be more practical than today. Oy ligzer aleim gzeira afilu b'mitzvah kala, or to make a decree over them, even if it's an easy mitzvah. They're purposely coming to stop the Jews from doing a mitzvah. The Jews in that city should fast and should blow trumpets until Hashem shows them mercy. The other cities around them, they fast, but they don't blow trumpets. Unless again they're blowing trumpets as like a form of a siren, a battle call for all the Jews to come together and help the city. What does it mean? Sword, if sword passes through your city, you have to fast. Afilu cherev shel shalim. This means even a peaceful sword. What's a peaceful sword? Idol-worshipping Gentiles are battling other idol-worshipping Gentiles. The war is between 2 goyim. It's not between the Yidden. But they're passing through the Jewish place. Even if there's no war between the Jews and the goyim, that's a trouble, and we fast over it. I don't have to tell you, in our history, every time the Crusades were on a mission to somewhere else, but they made sure to stop by the Jewish cities and make pogroms. Nothing to do with the Jews. But even when it looks like a peaceful sword, they're not after us, they're also after us. Shanemar, as it says, in Pashat Bechukotai, in the end of Vayikra, there's a whole section of curses that will befall the Jewish people, but before that there's blessings. If we do what Hashem wants, we get a whole bunch of blessings. One of them is, B'cherev lo ta'avor ba'artzachem. A sword won't pass in your land. What does it mean a sword won't pass in your land? Not only won't be any war between Jews and non-Jews, the sword won't even come through. Shenemar v'cherev lo ta'avor ba'artzachem, miklal that implies sheri'iyas hamilchama tzara. Just witnessing a war is already trouble. So, it's reason enough to fast. Number 3, the al-hadever, an epidemic. Eza hidever, how do we define an epidemic? So the Rambam says, here's what an epidemic is. Ir sheyesh ba chamesh me'es ragli. A city has 500 people. I found a picture where they put exactly a crowd of, just so you know what it looks like. This is 500 people in a square. And the yotzu mimena shleisha mesim b'shleisha yamim ze achar zeh. In 3 consecutive days, 1 person died from the city, so a total of 3 people died in 3 days. That's my 3 red guys in the corner of the screen. Okay, these are the dead guys. This is a crowd of exactly 500 people. 3 people died one day after another. That's called epidemic. Yotzu b'yom echad. But if 3 people died in 1 day, oy barba yamim, or over 4 days, ein zadever. It's not an epidemic. It has to be 1 person per day for 3 days. Proportionate to 500. So therefore, hayu ba'elef. There were 1,000 people. This is a guy tried to get a picture of exactly 1,000 people. Put them in a stadium. This is exactly, if you count, it's exactly 1,000 people. So once you double the numbers from 500 to 1,000, the proportion also doubles. V'yatzu mimena shisha mesim b'shleisha yamim ze achar zeh. Now you have 6 people died 3 days after another. In other words, 2 people on one day, 2 on the next day, 2 on the next day. Dever. That's a epidemic. Yatzu b'yom echad barba. If these 6 people died in 1 day or over 4 days, ein zadever. That's not an epidemic. V'chein lefi cheshbein zeh. And you keep on following this ratio, 3 people to 500 per every day for 3 days. Ve'ein hanashim b'haktanim b'haskenim sheshavsu mimalacha. Women, children, and elderly people who retired from work are not bichlal minyan anshe hamedina le'inyan zeh. They're not included in the census of the people for this matter. We're talking about adult males. 3 adult males have to die 1 day after another. Vav haya dever be'eretz Yisrael. If there was an epidemic in Israel, misanin sha'ar galuyos Yisrael alein. Everywhere else in the diaspora should fast with them. Typically we say only the city who's affected has to fast and the ones that are around them. Here, because it's in Israel, an epidemic is super dangerous, so we fast with Israel as well. Haya dever b'medina v'shayaris hilchos ubayis mimena limedina acheres. If there was an epidemic in one city, and there was a caravan which constantly went from that city or that country to another country. Shtehen misanos. Since travel is very common between them, they should both fast. Afal pishein rechoike zum yizu, even if they're far. Now today, this would cause many problems, because today we have flights going from everywhere to everywhere. So there's an epidemic in New York, and you have flights going to LA, you should fast over there. The truth is, even in olden times, the commentators in the Shulchan Aruch said that this doesn't apply anymore. This law of 2 cities that have caravans going through, you shouldn't fast. Why? Because if anything, our bodies are weaker, and if there's an epidemic in a city and you're going to fast, it's going to make you more likely to become sick. So we don't follow this halacha nowadays. So we covered the first 3 things. Sonei Yisrael, Jewish enemies paining us, war happening between 2 nations passing through our areas, and epidemic. Now the 4th thing is the animal. Ein misanin al chayara ela bizman shehi mishulachas. We only fast over bad animals if it's in a time that it's sent. Rashi says this means like sent by God. You can tell Hashem sent it. It's acting abnormally. Or they translate it here, on a rampage. Ketzad, what does it mean, an animal on a rampage? Nirasa ba'ir bayayim harezu mishulachas. If an animal is seen in a city by day, that's obviously sent by God. Why? Because wild animals don't go into populated areas by day. Except for this guy. This is a beer. He went into a store. Oh, there he is. Walks inside. He's having a good time. The owner, he went to attack the owner. Anyway, a beer in a city by day is not normal, okay? So then it's considered to be mishulachat. Nirasa basada bayoim, But if it's in the field by day, okay, the field is already more of a normal place for an animal to be, so it has to act strangely to be considered sent by God. What does it mean? If it sees two people and it didn't run away, that's a plague that's being sent by Hashem. Because typically, when a wild animal sees two people, it runs away. Here, it didn't run away, bad sign. If it's a field that's near a swamp, and it saw two people, and it chased after them, that's when it's considered sent. Because near a swamp, the animal feels more at home. So just being there without running away isn't considered a sign. If it chases after them, that's a bad sign. If it didn't chase them, it's not considered to be on a rampage. If it's literally in the swamp, even if the animal chases you around in the swamp, it's not considered to be sent or on a rampage. Unless it pounced on both of them and only ate one of them. If the animal ripped up and ate both of these human beings in the swamp, you cannot consider that to be abnormal or on a rampage. Because the swamp is the animal's natural habitat. It probably just pounced on these guys because it was hungry, not because it was in a rampage mood. That's how we define chayara, a wild animal. If somebody chose to build a house in a desert or in a forsaken land, since this is a place where animals gather, so here, for the animal to be considered abnormal, it has to do something really abnormal. If it ascends the roof of the home and takes a baby from the crib, then it's considered to be sent, on a rampage. But if it didn't reach that extreme, whatever else it does isn't considered to be on a rampage. Why? Because if you're in a dangerous area, if you went to the safari and built yourself a house, that's your fault if you get attacked. These people endangered themselves by coming to the place of the animals. So as long as the animal doesn't go like super abnormal on them, it's considered to actually be normal. So all that is as far as animals. Tes, sha'ar minei remes haaretz, other types of creepy crawlies on the ground, remes ha'oif, or flying insects, sheshulchu v'hiziku, which seem to have been sent on a rampage and are doing damage. If there's a plague of snakes or scorpions, or hornets, mosquitoes, something like that. We don't fast, we don't blow trumpets, we simply cry out to God with no trumpets because it isn't considered to be so dangerous. Yud, fifth category. We said locusts. Different kinds of locusts are reason for fast. Even if you only see one wing, some commentaries say it means one locust, or some say it means one fleet, like one little swarm. In all of Israel, right away, we're fasting and blowing trumpets. Why? Because one fleet could turn into this, a plague of locusts. This is a real thing in Africa. They come around and they just destroy whatever's in their way. On goivai is like another species of locust. Some say it's the red locust, some say it's the gray locust. We're not sure exactly which one it is. But the goivai, even slightest amount, also is a reason for fasting. Aval al hechagav, fourth type of locust, ein misanin alav olei masriin elazekin bilvad. That's not called so dangerous, so we don't fast, we don't blow trumpets, we only cry out to God. Okay, the next category, alashidafain balayerakin, blight. Yellow blight, black blight, different types of blight that affects grains. This is a field in Nebraska, actually, where you can kind of see, I don't know if you can see closely, all the tops of the stalks here are dried out a little yellowish, not the natural color.
And what happened, the seeds itself, the chita, is very thin and almost nothing. There is almost, the whole kama in Hebrew is
the stalk.
Is almost
empty. It gets very thinned out, essentially. The kernels,
kernel is very...
It basically destroys the crop from the inside, and on the top you could always see that it's like a little yellowish. So the Rambam says, Misha yaschil batvua. The moment it begins to affect somewhat of the grain field, it's a reason for fasting. Even if it only affected a small place, the size of the mouth of an oven, it's very small. We make a fast, we blow trumpets, this is big problems. Yud Beis al hamapoilas ketzad. What does it mean to fast? For falling walls or falling buildings. We don't mean like natural falling. If there was a healthy wall, there's no reason for it to fall. And all of a sudden it's just falling down. Too many healthy walls are falling down. And they're not by the river. Because by the river, the salt can accumulate and it can eat up the foundations from the inside. A regular healthy wall in the city, just falling down. That's considered to be a trouble, and we fast and we blow trumpets over it. We also should fast over earthquakes and winds, hurricanes, which cause the buildings to fall and kill people. We also fast, we also blow trumpets over that. Because it's part of mapoilas, it's part of falling walls. It's things that are causing falling walls. Yud Gimel al hachaloyim ketzad. What about for sickness? You fast for sickness. One sickness affects many people in the same city. Askara, many people identify as quinsy. It's like a type of constriction in your throat, where you begin to choke and your breath airways are stuffed, and you die from asphyxiation, basically. Essentially, you can't breathe anymore.
And what is
Charchur is a bit of a debate. In the Chumash, Rashi describes charchur as like a type of typhoid. A person runs a very, very high fever and constantly thirsty for water. Here they say it means polio, but they say it's an abstract translation based on a commentary of Rav Sadia Gaon. Whatever, some kind of sickness. And all of a sudden, everyone's getting it in the city. And people are dying because of the sickness. That's called the communal trouble. And we make a fast and we blow trumpets. Also, if you have moist itch, people are getting boils all over that have pus in them. That's like regular boils, and should be fasted over. If most of the community is being affected, you fast and you blow trumpets. But if it's just a dry itch that everybody's getting, we simply cry out to Hashem over it. We do not make a fast over it. Now, what's the difference between this and the epidemic? The epidemic, we said before, you have to have 3 people dying, one after another. Here, none of those requirements are needed. So the commentaries say that either because this type of sickness is more severe, but others say a dever epidemic means when people just die, straight up. They don't get sick. This is another stage. They're getting sick and they're dying. If they're getting sick and they're dying, that's more severe. If they're just dropping dead, then you have to have 3 people die on 3 consecutive days. Yudalit, al-hamizoynes ketzad. What about sustenance, food? What does it mean to fast for food? Merchandise items of merchandise that most of the livelihood of that city depends on, became cheap. Like flax, linen in Babylonia. V'yayin v'shemen be'eretz Yisrael. Wine and oil in Israel. Fascinating. The Rambam says wine and oil in Israel are things that most people's lives depended on. Everybody was a wine seller, was an oil seller. V'nismai tamasa v'hamatan. Business got so bad, ad sheyitztarich hatagar limkar shava asara b'shisha. The wholesaler, who typically can sell something for $10, sells it for only $6. 60% of the value. And only then he finds a buyer. These guys look too happy to be bargaining. But let's say it's not a happy bargain. Okay, he can't even find a buyer for 60%. That's a pain, a trouble of the community. And we blow trumpets over it during the weekday, as the Rambam said, and we can even cry out about it on Shabbos. So the last part is the chidush, that even on Shabbat you can cry out about it. Typically nothing else you cry on Shabbat. This you cry on Shabbat. The words masriin aleh, blow trumpets, can only be referring to weekday because we don't blow trumpets on Shabbos ever. Other commentaries say, over here in this halacha, masriin means also to cry out, to make a big shturim, tefillah, not the trumpets. Tesvav al hamatar ketzad. Now we move to rain. And rain is going to take up the most space in the Rambam because rain was a very, very big issue for Israel and for the farmers. In this chapter, we're going to talk about 2 types of rain issues. Too much rain, and rain that begins and then stops. In the next 2 chapters, tomorrow and the next day, we're going to learn about when there is no rain at all, a drought. So we're first going to begin with plagues that are dealing with actual rain. Alamatar ketzad. What does it mean to have to fast for rain? If there's so much rain that it's literally bothering people, we should pray over them. It's the one time we should pray for rain to stop. There could be no bigger trouble than this. Everybody's homes in those days, were mud homes. This was it was very, very simple construction. If there's too much rain, houses are going to fall, and people's homes are going to become their graves. That's a major reason for prayer. In Israel, we never pray over too much rain. There can never be too much rain in Israel. It's a land of mountains, and people build their houses with stone, even till today. In California, all the frames of homes are what? Wood. You go to Israel, it's all stone, it's all concrete. Actually, a lot of rain is good for them. We never fast to take away good things. So too much rain outside of Israel could be a problem. Pray for it. In Israel, never a problem. Tezayin, let's talk about a new type of category. Tvua shetzamcha. There was rain in the normal time. The grain grew. V'nimna hamotar v'hischilu tzmachim livosh. Then the rain stopped, and now this is happening. The grain is slowly but surely drying out. You must fast now and must cry to Hashem until one of the two happens. Either Hashem will bring rain, or the produce completely dries out, and then there's no point of fasting because it's just dry. Also, if Pesach time, Passover or near Passover, comes in Israel, which is the time typically for trees to grow, and the rains didn't come yet. In other words, they came in the beginning, but they stopped coming later. They should fast and cry out to God until either Hashem brings the rain that's required for the trees, or until the time passes, because if the time passes, then all hope is gone anyways, fasting won't help. If Sukkot time came and enough rains didn't come down to fill up all the pits and all the ditches and all the caves where Jews who would travel to Israel would get their drinking water from, you should fast till enough rain that's fitting for the pits comes down. If there is no drinking water at all in Israel, we can fast over rain any time. If there's no drinking water, you got to have drinking water. Even in the summertime, you should pray for rain so you can have water to drink. Yudches, if in the rainy season there's a break of 40 days between one rain and the next, that's actually a drought. There's rain coming down, but there's 40-day breaks, it's bad. It's a drought. And we fast again and pray until either the rain comes down or the time passes, in which case we submit to Hashem's will and stop fasting.